Hare Krishna. So let us start with Mangalacharan prayers. Please try to sing along. The more with more focus, the more focus you put in reciting the Mangalacharan, the better your understanding will be. I try to do the same for myself, and it is true that when I recite the Mangalacharan carefully, then I feel that I was benefited by doing or speaking the class more. So it is definitely, uh, there is truth in the fact that it is Mangalacharan. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Soyam Rupah Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutah Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Namaum Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे श्रीमद् भगवद गीता की जय जगत गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय Okay. So is the audio clear? One second. Can somebody do a thumbs up? I sorry didn't see it. Audio is good. Okay, thanks. All right. So we stopped at 2.20 last time. So let's try to make more progress today. Before I'll make this announcement again, but we will have a break in the classes for I think 2 weeks. So I will announce, but we'll have a break in classes. Keep an eye on the announcements. And there will be extra classes for Bhakti Shastri students and so on for discussions, review of the homework, and all those things. There will be extra classes that I will hold. They're all optional, but please keep an eye on the Bhakti Shastri announcement group. Okay, having said that, I will repeat this announcement later for those that may have joined late. So 2.21. So here Lord Krishna begins to talk about, so we continue the discussion on the properties of the soul. the first thing that was discussed was the fact that a soul exists within the body. And then we discussed how the soul changes bodies when the body dies. And then we discussed some properties of the soul, like the soul is eternal, the body is temporary, the soul cannot be killed, the soul was never created, it can never be destroyed. So it was beginningless. We discussed this concept of beginningless and so on. So we discussed many properties of the soul. Now we begin with, or we continue this discussion, and this is a discussion on the jnana of the soul. So 2.21. So where is 2.21? Let me open it. So Veda Vinashinam Nityam Enama Jama Avyayam. So Veda is a very key word here. A person who, so the translation is, O Partha, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible? So the focus is on knowing that the soul is indestructible. One sec. Where did this go? Is indestructible, eternal, unborn, and immutable, kill anyone or cause anyone to kill. So knowing that the soul is all these things, is basically a spiritual entity, then one will not kill somebody, because the soul cannot be killed. Well, you can kill the body, but the soul cannot be killed. So a person who knows this is above the material platform. So that knowledge, so here we are talking about Jnana Yoga. I have a bullet at the end of this slide which says more details will be covered in chapter 4 and 5, which is Jnana Yoga. So such a person who knows, and here it's not about like you all know, it's also knowing to the extent that one is willing to act on it with such great conviction. So it is the knowledge along with the conviction that is being discussed here as, or that is being called as Veda. And such a person sees beyond war, death, and so on. He may still perform material actions, but the goal, so the material action will be performed because he is in a material body. His consciousness, his understanding is completely spiritual. His conviction is spiritual, but because he has a material body, he will perform material actions. But those actions are not to attain anything material. They are for a spiritual purpose, a higher purpose, which is a spiritual purpose. So the purpose is spiritual. The spiritual purpose of the Mahabharata war from Arjuna's perspective will be revealed later in the Bhagavad Gita by Lord Krishna. But Lord Krishna is basically saying that you need to, or a person should fight. Fighting is a material action, but the purpose behind fighting is spiritual. Spiritual actions cannot lead to a material result, and the result will also be spiritual. So the act of fighting is with a spiritual consciousness, one who knows the science of the soul and has full conviction about it. And all this will be covered more in chapter 4 and 5. So that is the focus of the 21st verse, which is knowledge of the science of the soul. So I hope that is clear, that this is talking about acting with knowledge. With that knowledge, armed with the knowledge that the soul is spiritual, act with that consciousness. Okay? Just like a soldier in a war, he is not fighting for his salary. He has the consciousnesses, I have to defend my country. The salary is the least of the concerns, that I'm a soldier, I'm a general, I'm a captain, I'm a whatever, major. That's the least of his concerns. The consciousness is my country, or I'm trying to fight. So in the same way, Arjuna has to go even beyond that and fight for a spiritual cause. Now, fighting for a country, we discussed, is not spiritual. So I just gave that as an example of how there can be a lower cause and a higher cause. In this example, lower cause is salary, higher cause is fighting for the nation. In Arjuna's case, the lower cause is bodily, my friends, or even for dharma. What do I have to do with Kshatriya and all? And the higher cause is a spiritual cause, which will be revealed later. So, still, one could ask. So now 22 is a very important verse, or a very sweet verse. It is a verse that is more easily understood by common people. It's one of the more common verses. So the question can be, okay, I may have the knowledge. Still, why should I be the instrument or catalyst in killing anyone's body? I know that soul cannot be killed. Why should I even kill the body? So this verse is a nice verse. Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grihnati naroparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirna anyani samyati navani dehi. So the translation is, as a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up old and useless ones. So the key word here is jirnani. Vasamsi jirnani. So जीर्णा means जीर्ण. हिंदी में बोलते हैं ये कपड़ा जीर्ण हो गया. जीर्ण हो गया means it has become torn, it has become dirty or torn, it's useless. So why should I be the instrument in killing anybody's body? Because the body has become old and useless and needs a change. It's like you are giving a gift of new clothes to someone who is wearing old clothes. And it's not just that the gross body. Now we'll discuss this concept of gross versus subtle in just a second, or let's discuss it now. The gross body is the material body which you can see and your medical instruments can see. It is made up of 5 panchadhatu: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. You can think of it like it is made of out of the elements in the periodic table. In chemistry, you might have studied. And then there is a subtle body which is made of man, buddhi, ahankar, mind, intelligence, and ahankar or false ego. So these three things are not made out of the elements of the periodic table. No medical instruments can detect the mind, or maybe they can in the future, but mind, intelligence, and ahankar or false ego, these are the subtle bodies. These are also material, these are also part of the body. Soul is different from all of these things. So not just that the gross body becomes old and useless, even the subtle body made up of mind, intelligence, and false ego also becomes overburdened with sinful reactions. And when somebody has committed a lot of sinful actions, then he needs to pay for his sinful actions. And one of the punishments is called capital punishment. So again, there are a lot of uh, rules according to the law of dharma. According to there is a Manu Samhita, which is known as the law book of mankind. It is very detailed. We don't need to worry about it. Under what conditions should one be given capital punishment and so on. But when you do that, you repay a whole lot of sinful activities or sinful reactions that you have incurred. So as just like a person who gives capital punishment does not incur sin, you are helping the person by helping him to repay for his sins. So in the same way, just as old clothes need a change, killing the gross body, by killing the gross body, you may be doing them a favor by giving them new clothes. However, that is just for them the consciousness that you have is what matters the most. Even when the judge is awarding capital punishment, his consciousness is that, yes, I need to help this person. But capital punishment today, a judge may not think it will help this person. More, he thinks like it will set an example for society. It will execute, or it will uphold the law. And I am a cause, or I am an instrument in the upholding the law of the land. In the same way, when Arjun is being asked to kill Bhishma and Drona, the higher consciousness matters the most. And we will see what is that higher consciousness, or the higher cause, or the spiritual cause. Uh, we'll see that in just a bit. Now, it is being said here that you may be doing a favor by giving them new clothes. Do not, the instruction of Bhagavad Gita is not that you should go around distributing new clothes to everyone. Means you shouldn't go around killing everyone. Here, Krishna is telling Arjuna to kill Bhishma and Drona. Our instruction from Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is very different. It is that of ahimsa and tolerance, or kshanti, as well as peace, shanti. Shanti and kshanti. Kshanti means tolerance, shanti means peace, ahimsa means non-violence. So all these things are instructions, general instructions for us. But the higher cause, so here is the higher cause, or the spiritual reason for Arjuna to fight the battle, is that Lord Krishna, who is Bhagavan himself, who is the Supreme Lord, is telling Arjuna to do something. And the word of God supersedes any laws. So just because Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna to do something, Arjuna should completely obey what he is being told. That is the higher cause. So the highest cause is to follow God's instructions. Now, if God were to come to you and you can detect that he is God, for sure. Now, if I come to you and tell I am God, you go and kill this other person, you should not do it, because I am not God. Okay. So you must first have the ability to detect if somebody is talking to you and saying I am God, whether he is actually God. And yes, if that is the case, then you should blindly obey those instructions. Following God's instructions is the highest dharma, and Arjun follows that dharma. So that is the higher cause of fighting the war, because Krishna repeatedly is telling Arjun to fight the war. But that is not the instruction for us. So please keep that in mind. The instruction here through these verses is the instruction of the existence of a spiritual entity called soul and its properties. Okay, I'll keep moving forward. I see there's a question, but I'll take it a little later. I want to just reach a logical point. Keep your hand raised. So, in 23rd verse, Lord Krishna says, the soul can never be cut to pieces by any weapon, nor burnt by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakaha, na chainam kledyanti apo, na shoshayanti marutaha. So the soul cannot be cut into pieces by any shastra or any weapon. So it cannot be cut, it cannot be burnt. The body can be cut and burnt. So there is a difference between the soul and the body that is being shown here. All the four things, cutting, burning, wetting or moistening, and drying by the wind, all these four things apply to the body. And what is being said is that they do not apply to the soul. The soul remains fresh as ever. Just like clothes can be torn, but the body remains intact. When clothes get torn, just the clothes get torn. You can get new clothes. As soon as you get new clothes, your body again looks as fresh as it was when you wore the previous set of clothes which got torn. So, similarly, the soul is ever fresh. And therefore, Lord Krishna will say many times that do not lament for the soul. Oh, sorry, do not lament for the loss of the body. Okay, 24 and 25 are a summary. Now, this section, the core section of the science of the soul is ending. In the 25th verse, one main section will end, and I will explain what comes later. So 24 and 25 are just a summary of all the properties of the soul. And Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur will say that some of these are repetitions, but repetitions are good. I think I mention it later, but it's okay. But repetitions are good because we are dull-headed, dull-minded in Kali Yuga, and we need to be repeated for us to remember. So the soul is unbreakable or cannot be cut. A chedyo, ched, we say, cannot be penetrated. Akledyo or insoluble, cannot be wet. All these properties we have already discussed. Cannot be word. Adahyo, ashoshyo, cannot be dried. Everlasting, eternal, nitya. Sarvagataha, present everywhere as the Supreme Soul, Paramatma. Immovable, achala. Sthanur, immutable. Eternally the same, sanatanaha. Invisible in the next verse, avyakta. Inconceivable, achintya, and avikarya, unchangeable. So these are all the properties of the soul that are being discussed. Now, one thing to notice for the intellectually minded people is that all these properties of the soul are described as negatives. It is not this, not this, not this, not this. So most of these properties are negatives. Start with the or immovable, insoluble, unbreakable, and so on. Invisible, inconceivable. Why is that so? That is so because all these are negatives of something else, of the corresponding positive, which is true for material things. So, because we live in a material world and we just cannot perceive or we cannot conceive of, we cannot even imagine something that is outside the material world. And therefore, we are only used to things that can be cut, that can be burnt, that are visible, that are movable, that are temporary. And therefore, it is Lord Krishna is trying to explain the properties of the soul as negatives because saying it's none of these things. It is something which is not this. If you think about it a little more, you will realize that there is not many other ways to describe something like this because you have to describe something which we have no conception of at all. Using words or using properties that we are familiar with. And none of them apply to this thing. So the only way to say it is, it's not this. So the soul can be described in spiritual terms, but we will have no understanding of it. To get for the more scientific or intellectual minded people, to get some understanding of this concept, how to visualize something which is completely outside of our ability to think. There is a very good old, almost it's 200-year-old book called Flatland. If you have not read it, you can read it and it will give you a good sense of how to think about something that is completely inconceivable. That book talks about people living in a two-dimensional world. So basically, it goes one level below where we are. We live in a three-dimensional world, and it shows the life of people living in it. It's a kind of a slightly mathematical book, but it shows the how people live and think if they are living in a two-dimensional world. And it is so funny and it is so comic because we can visualize what is three dimensions and we look at them and say, this guy cannot even see, like this. But if you put yourself in their shoes, they are completely stuck in a two-dimensional world. So it's a very nice way of trying to put ourselves in the shoes of somebody lower than us and see their handicaps, see their constraints. In the same way, we should be able to see that, if such constraints apply to them, maybe there are a higher set of constraints that apply to us. Just as a small example, we cannot imagine what is a four-dimensional object. We just cannot. It is called I forget, what is it called, Ram?
What is the fourth dimension called?
No, what is the four-dimensional cube called?
Oh, tesseract.
Tesseract. Yes, thanks. So we have given a name to it. We can describe some properties about it, but we have no idea how it actually looks because we have no access to four dimensions. Anyway, so that is just a reason of why all or most of the properties of the soul are described as negatives. One important point I want to point out here is inconceivability, achintya. It is completely inconceivable. The soul is inconceivable, which means from a material standpoint, it is inconceivable. So any scientists or anybody who are trying to say we will invent or develop a instrument or some scientific experiment to detect the soul, they are all lying or they are fooling themselves. Because from material vision or from material approach, you can never, the soul is achintya. It cannot be conceived of, it cannot be detected at all. Okay, so the Bhagavad Gita is saying that. So on the strength of the Bhagavad Gita, we can say that. Okay, now let us go to question. Shrikar?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you. So I had two questions. My first question is, you mentioned that the subtle body is also affected by, or like subtle bodies also described with Martha Sparshasta Konteya. But how exactly the subtle body gets passed on to the next life, right? From what I remember.
The subtle body as such is not passed to the next life. The subtle body carries certain, or the karma and the samskaras are carried over to the next life. Okay. So
but is the karma, does the karma
the body
count
is not as such carried over. Like, for example, the intelligence, buddhi, is not carried over. A human buddhi or intelligence is completely different from the intelligence of a dog. So it's not literally carried over, but the samskaras and all are carried over by the subtle body, and then in the new body they get a different kind of intelligence, a different kind of mind, and a different kind of ahankar.
Okay, yeah. So what exactly are these samskara, like the samskaras that get
Our
pat like,
conditioning.
okay.
Our conditioning is all I can say. The things that you can say likes and dislikes, you can say habits and so on.
Okay. Yeah.
Our things that we have become used to, the things that we like and likes, dislikes, and so on.
Thank you. Second question. So if Krishna, you mentioned the idea of Krishna coming before us, how can we actually determine that it's Krishna? Now, one thing I know is that Krishna is when we say Guru Sadhu Shastra, when Krishna appears in front of you, Krishna is also acts according to Shastric principles, right?
Krishna may or may not act according to shastric principles. Yes, Krishna acts according to shastric principles, but we need to be able to understand the Shastra very well. Now, your other question as to how do you know that uh, somebody coming in front of you is Bhagavan or not, there are a lot of criteria that are given in the Shastras. First of all, Shastras mention all the avatars of Bhagavan. So, if somebody comes and says that I am Bhagavan, his name or his precise identity should be mentioned in the Shastra. That can be the first level of distinction. So, I will leave it there, and we can discuss more deeply at a later time.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Raman Prabhu and Roma Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. One quick question, I think it's continuation of what Shekhar asked. Abhas, sometimes when you are doing chanting or prayers, you get some abhas that this is an instruction or this is how God wants it to be. Can that be considered as instruction for God, from gods?
Yeah. So, first of all, we have to be very fixed in our spiritual practices or sadhana. And the mind definitely talks to us. So we have to look for multiple levels of confirmation. If we are getting some abhas or some internal feeling that we are getting this instruction in some spiritual way, through some spiritual channel, and the best way is to discuss it with one's guru. So we have to see that first it has to come multiple times, not just once, not just twice, maybe 3 times or 5 times, in a very strong way, and plus discuss with one's guru, and then it's not an easy answer. But the fundamental point is one's sadhana or one's spiritual practices must be very strong. It very, very, very rarely happens that for a very materialistic person or who's not doing one sadhana, one spiritual practice, and Krishna will come and just give instructions in the heart. Krishna has given enough instructions through the Shastra, and that is the primary source of our instructions. And any instructions that come through the heart and they are in any kind of conflict or not aligned with what is in the Shastra should be it should be a huge red flag. Then one needs to, if one is still convinced that it is probably something coming from a spiritual channel, then one must discuss with one's guru. Okay.
Hare Krishna.
All right. Okay, let's move forward. Shrikar, did you have another question, or you should lower your hand if after asking?
Oh, sorry, Prabhu. Yeah, I'll lower my hand.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, we'll move forward. So 26 to 28, Lord Krishna gives a slightly alternate view. We'll not spend much time on it. So I'll read the verses 26, 27, and 28. If, however, you think that the soul will always be born and die forever, you still have no reason to lament, O mighty armed. One who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death, one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. All created beings are unmanifest in their beginning, manifest in their interim state, and unmanifest again when annihilated. So what need is there for lamentation? So here, Lord Krishna is offering a slightly alternate view that even if you think, my dear Arjuna, that the soul dies, the soul does not die, it is eternal, but say the soul dies with the body. Okay, so the body is dying and the soul is also dying. Then also there is no reason to lament, since one day it has to die. So the point here is death is inevitable, whether it is of the soul or the body or both, whatever you consider, Arjuna, The point is death is inevitable. Apariharye. So apariharye is the key word here, the inevitability of death. So why you are, one day everybody has to die. And this was discussed in 2.13 as well. The point is we lament about untimely deaths or unnatural deaths. Now it is a very fine line between what is natural and what is unnatural. Natural death, one may say, is, oh, I die in my sleep. What if you fall down? You are walking and you fall down and you die. Is that natural? Nobody else pushed you. You can fall in such a way that you die. You may hit your head against a very sharp rock, or you may fall some distance or some, from a building or whatever. Is that natural or is that not natural? What would you call as natural? What would you not call as natural? It's a very fine line. If you are walking on the road and you get hit by, some, uh, driver or some accident happens. Now you can say these are all gray areas. What is natural? It was not premeditated. You can say whether the red light was on and you start walking and you are not supposed to be walking and you get hit by a car. So there are too many things to be considered to say something which is natural or not. But the point is, death is inevitable. It will come in one way or the other. There is no clear thing that we can say this is perfectly natural. One can say on one extreme, I will live for 100 years. I will peacefully die in my sleep. That is natural. Everything else is unnatural and unwanted. That is not correct. We will all agree. If somebody smokes a lot and gets cancer and dies, you can say it is his, um, his result of his actions. Somebody else may get cancer just like that, same kind of lung cancer that a person got out of smoking, but he did not smoke ever. What will you say to him? That is natural. In the other case, it is not natural. How do you know that in that case that smoking caused lung cancer to that person and this other person got the same lung cancer without smoking? So the point being made is, instead of trying to debate or these are all ways to console ourselves. Ultimately, the point remains that death is inevitable and it will come in one or the other way. And one must not lament it, or one must not get too disturbed by this. So that is what Lord Krishna says. Tasmat apariharye arthe na tvam shochitum arhasi. Shochitum arhasi means you should not lament. So that is the main point being made, or the key word to be taken away from these is that the inevitability of death. Another interesting point that is mentioned in the 28th verse is that the living entity enters into an unmanifest state after death and before taking another birth. So there is some gap of time when the subtle body is carrying the samskaras, the karma, etc., from one body to the other. And this time is, in the order of, there's a lot of discussion around it. I will not go into such discussion in the Bhagavad Gita class. It could be of the order of minutes to days to months, and so on. There are various analyses given in various shastras. Okay, so that is up to 28. Now the conclusion of the science of the soul section is coming up in the last two verses of this section. So up to 25 from 2.11. So just to please pay attention, 2.11 to 25. 15 verses were the core science of the soul. 26, 27, 28 was a slightly alternate view that even if the soul also dies, death is inevitable, therefore do not lament. So it is an instruction to Arjuna for not lamenting the loss of someone because death is inevitable. And 29 and 30 are now summarizing the entire section of the science of the soul. So, Lord Krishna says this is the amazing science of the soul. If you sit back and think, now we have been so much thinking, or we are so much, especially people of Indian origin, have this concept of soul so much in their understanding that it is very normal. But if you sit back and think about it, it's something very, very amazing. The concept of the soul and the fact that there is a soul in the body which transmigrates from one to the other at death. There are some people who will just not understand it. They may understand superficially, but they will not get convinced. And for such people, Lord Krishna says that let them stay on the material platform. What is that material platform? That is the platform of dharma, which is the section which is coming up next. And Lord Krishna says perhaps it's, or the reason he brings up the next section is perhaps it's better for such people to stay there. Let them at least stay on the material platform and try to ascend to the platform of dharma. There are so many people who are not even on the platform of dharma. Look at Duryodhan. He is totally not on the platform of dharma. So, and so many other people who will listen to the Bhagavad Gita, let them at least stay on the material platform and come towards dharma. And from there, slowly make progress towards a spiritual understanding, a completely spiritual understanding, like the science of the soul, with conviction. So the science of the soul is very easy to understand. The hard part is getting the conviction about it and to be able to act on it. We will discuss some practical applications in the very next slide. So being able to act based on that spiritual conception is very, very important. That is when one can say, I understand it. Otherwise, it's just theory. Just to give a more mundane example, quantum mechanics. I have personally talked to some very, very big physicists. At a superficial level, yes, they can solve the hardest problems. They can derive all equations. They can give a class and lecture. But in their gut, if you ask, are you convinced? Or do you really know why this all makes sense? At the bottom of their gut, the answer is no. I have no idea why it makes sense. So there are things even in the mundane or material level which are like this, let alone the science of the soul. So the next section is going to be about a material understanding and how to go from a lower level of material consciousness to a higher level of material consciousness. And the last section of Bhagavad Gita Chapter 2 will be to connect these two. There is the whole spiritual section which was discussed so far. Material section will be discussed next in the next 7 verses, 31 to 37. And then the third main portion of the second chapter will say that how can somebody at a material level come to this highest spiritual level of complete conviction that we are not this body, we are a spirit soul only, and we should completely stop acting on the level of body. Okay? So, now everything in Bhagavad Gita has a practical application. So, what is the practical application for this section of the science of the soul? Maybe some of you can raise your hands, maybe 3 or 4, and share something. What is the practical application of this? Something that is useful to you in your life. And keep it very short. Okay, Ram.
Understanding the science of the soul makes understanding death easier and dealing with it in our life.
Okay, very good. So dealing with death, which is a very, troublesome or a very hard thing in many people's lives. Good. Yes, Suresh Prabhu.
Yeah, namaste, Hari Om. I felt that because we heard multiple times Sri Krishna say, Shochitam arhasi, I felt the summary was kind of, don't worry about too many things.
Don't worry about what?
Don't worry about things in the material world.
About things in the material world. Okay, can you say something more? That sounds a little like I could say I'm just trying to bring out the meaning here. That may sound like escapism. So how can you clarify that? What's the good side of it?
Yeah, I think
Is it?
the good side is that the soul is imperishable and permanent, right? And to live in that soul spirit means to not worry about a lot of these things.
Okay. So let me try, and maybe what you are trying to say is that life will take its own course. One should not overly try to make things go our way. Overly is the key word here. One should definitely try to be successful. Otherwise, escapism means, oh, I don't have to do anything. And don't worry, life will, take care of you. I will just sit and twiddle my thumbs. That is not the instruction of Bhagavad Gita. So, what I think you're trying to say is that one should not be overly concerned about what is going on. Do your best and leave the rest to Krishna. So, that could be
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and also we had heard, I think, one of the previous verses you had mentioned, I think, last class, which was that heat and cold, sorrow
Yes.
and success will come and go, but learn to tolerate. Right? That was, I think, one of the verses. So that was a similar thing, I felt.
Okay. Tolerance. Okay. Very good. Yes, Sai Prabhu, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
So I feel one of my practical applications is to really understand what to give priority in your life, because there are many times, just few examples are we may become very obsessed by things that are maybe very short term or something very centric to your material improvement, but then at the loss of it we become very depressed. Understanding an overview of what to actually give priority, because your bodily enjoyment is very temporary, but your
My
soul,
question to you would be, how are you connecting it to the science of the soul?
because that's the pleasure that you get out of obsessing over these you know, it only gives pleasure to your body, or it increases your attachments to such things, and this attachments will further make you more sense dependent. So this understanding of the soul kind of gives you tools to take a step back and say, okay, is this really good for me or not? And if, why is it not good for me? And then it helps us prioritize in such a way where we can sort of look for something that is more spiritual rather than
Okay.
material.
So you're saying how to look for something which is good for the soul, not for the body, because oftentimes we just look out for the enjoyment of the body. Good. Thank you.
Yes, Prabhu. One small other thing is, it also means, let's say someone is mocking us and our ego is hurt. You'll know whether to take it personally or not, because let's say if someone is mocking us based on our body or something, then we know that is not something that we have to give so much importance to, because we
Yes.
are the eternal soul, we are not the body.
Very good. Very hard,
So
but yes, if we can get there,
it is.
that we do not take to heart if somebody says or criticizes us, we have made a lot of progress. Thank you.
Grounded in humility. Yes, Prabhu.
Damodar Krishna Prabhu and Shameshwari Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. One of the things that I was thinking of is after knowing till now, after knowing we are soul, and then what are the properties of soul, one of the practical aspect would be to ask, then what should we do? What should I do? If I'm soul, uh, should I keep engaged in bodily activities, or is there any something else? Like what is my real dharma? And all those kinds of question. So basically, practical aspect is being more inquisitive about knowing what should I really do now.
Very good. So being inquisitive about the meaning of life or purpose of our life, of how to approach life going forward. Very good. Okay. Then Ramya Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. For me, this is given a perspective of looking at big picture rather than focusing on small things. By that, like there is a lot of worry. Now I take a step back and see how much does this look into the big perspective. That is, the worry is only for the material body, and that distinction I'm able to make. Somehow it's making me worry less of the day-to-day worries that were before. Seeing it as two different things and two distinct things and understanding the big picture is helping worry less on the day-to-day things which used to be very worrying before.
Very good. Thank you. Makarand Prabhu, last. Yes, go ahead.
You are not what you generally think you are. Like you always associate yourself as the body you see. So all your decisions, all your thinking is affected by that. But once you start seeing yourself as something above and beyond body, then the whole way of thinking changes.
Okay, good.
And
Okay.
another thing is that everything has a shelf life. Life also has a shelf life. So whatever is born has to go in the cyclic process. Born and destroy and born and destroy. So the cycle will go on. So wherever you are in this cycle, you have to do your best in that. And
best knowing that the cycle is a cycle.
Cycle is that.
You cannot convert the cycle into a straight line.
Right.
Good. Thank you. Okay, we have two more and then no more. Okay. So please don't raise your hands anymore. Anjana Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So my learning is that soul is eternal, and then how do I feed the soul? How do I, nourish my soul so that, because that is something which is eternal, and that is going to go with me in my next life and next eternally. So that's my learning.
Very good. Thank you. And hope you are doing well.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Convey my pranam to everybody at home.
Yeah, for sure. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Ram Prabhu. Ram Pai.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Namaste, Hari Om. So I think I understand most of it, and I think the main important thing that I'm studying from this is learning from this is the idea of soul brings in explains the concept of accountability. Like if there is no soul and if it is just this body, then what happens? Like whatever good and bad things that you do in your life, where is the accountability for that, right? This kind of explains it, and that's kind of satisfying to me. However, I have one. Can I ask a question here? I have two questions, but I'll just ask one if you allow me to.
Go ahead.
Okay. Question number one is there pain and pleasure when the soul is by itself and is not occupied or is not in a body? Does the soul go through pain and pleasure when it is not in a body?
Pain and pleasure is an artifact of the senses, and senses are part of the body. That's very simple answer. Doctor himself can numb you and do heart surgery on you. Do you feel pain? No. So it's completely at a bodily level.
So there is no pain and pleasure at all when somebody leaves the body.
Oh, material pain and pleasure. Okay, now we can go deeper into talking about spiritual pleasure, but I'm supposing that's not part of your question. So there is
No.
something spiritual pleasure, spiritual pain.
Right,
So
like
we are
for example, if my soul leaves the body and goes somewhere, I don't know where, but will the soul feel any kind of pain, pleasure? That's the question that I'm trying to get. No. Okay. Thank you.
okay. Let us continue now. And you can lower your hand after you're asking your questions. So most of you have um, listed down all the things or mentioned all the things. So the practical application of this is very important. First of all, there is more to life, or there is more to our existence than the body. Makrand Prabhu, did you have a question? Otherwise, you can lower your hand, please. Thanks. So there is more to life than the body, or more to our existence than just our body. We should realize that all the things that we do are for our body. So we should reduce and ultimately stop thinking too much. Again, I have added two words there, too much or reduce. So, but the end goal is to completely stop thinking about protecting or nourishing the body. And if one does that, then one has already attained what is known as nirvana, or that is the highest stage of existence. But till then, we should try to go towards that, to reduce thinking too much about everything about the body. So everything that we do is about protecting or nourishing. Protecting means protect what you have. Nourish means to add to what you have. So what I have should stay as it is, and I should keep adding more. That is the concept of protect and nourish. And everything we do is at this level of the body. We should start thinking like one of the devotees, I think Anjana Mataji said, that we should start thinking about protecting and nourishing the requirements of the soul. And the fundamental requirement of the soul is to get united with Bhagavan. And today it is not united with Bhagavan. Now, again, I'm using a simple word. I don't want a whole deep philosophical discussion on what is the meaning of united. We are united. So in some sense, we are united or we are with Bhagavan, but we are looking away the other way. So how you can say how to turn towards Bhagavan, or how to get united with Bhagavan, or how to come closer to Bhagavan. All of those are valid descriptions. But that is the requirement, or that is the desire, or that is what I call, just now I said, the spiritual happiness of the soul. So that is the nourishment aspect of the soul. And protecting means to continue to protect our spiritual journey, not go back. Many people, go forward and then they go back in their spiritual journey. So protecting and nourishing the soul is very important. And continue to make progress. That is part of nourishment, but continue to make progress. And continuing to make progress is possible only in human life. A dog or a cat cannot make spiritual progress. It can make very good material progress. You can become a strong dog, big dog. There's a American slang, I'm a big dog, I'm a whatever. So big dog, so there's no fun in becoming a big dog. Any dog can become a big dog. But only in human life can we become more spiritually advanced. So that is what is a practical learning, that one should think, this was also said, long term, across lifespans. We all think about this lifespan. Many people think long term, but within this lifespan. Everybody worries about retirement savings. What is retirement saving? It's a long term thinking. While I'm making more money, let me save something so that I can use it later. That is long-term thinking. In the same way, we must think long-term across lifespans, doing good things for others, so that in the next life, we can reap the benefits. Again, that is at a material level, that's not spiritual, but still it is long-term thinking. So the body will die one way or the other, making the best use of the life that is available, and especially the human life. The best use of human life is to make spiritual progress. And even at a material level, treating others with kindness and respect, because they are also spirit souls. It's not that the soul is only within us, within our body. Everybody has a spirit soul. So treating others with the same kindness that we expect us to be treated. And the concepts of tolerance and forgiveness, like someone mentioned. And there may be many more. This was just my own list of what are the practical applications of the science of the soul. Okay, moving forward. Next, 7 verses. This section is talking about a material alternative. So like Lord Krishna said that in verse number 29, I think, that some look as the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. So there are people like that. And for them, there is a material alternative. And in the eyes of, or through the eyes of Arjuna, the material alternative for Arjuna is to act according to his dharma. And his dharma as a kshatriya. A kshatriya's dharma is to be a leader, brave, a honorable warrior who never turns his back. You say, no, I will always eat the bullet on my chest, not on my back. And he's the deliverer of justice. And even if he has to die, it has to be an honorable death. Like you say, he took the bullet on the chest, not on the back. So the first, so we'll read these verses. So the goal is to advance from a lower level of material existence to a higher level of material existence. So I will read, so there are 2 main sections in this. 31 and 32 are showing the good side. So I will just read those. Or let me see, we'll read it when we come to that, okay? Let me read it aloud, okay? 31 to 37, I'll just read it, and you also can hear and follow it in your book. Considering your specific duty as a kshatriya, you should know that there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles. And so there is no need for hesitation. O Partha, happy are the kshatriyas to whom such fighting opportunities come unsought, opening for them the doors of the heavenly planets. If, however, you do not perform your religious duty of fighting, then you will certainly incur sins for neglecting your duties and thus lose your reputation as a fighter. People will always think of your infamy, and for a respectable person, dishonor is worse than death. The great generals who have highly esteemed your name and fame will think that you have left the battlefield out of fear only, and thus they will consider you insignificant. Your enemies will describe you in many unkind words and scorn your ability. What could be more painful for you? O son of Kunti, either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. Therefore, get up with determination and fight. So these are the 7 verses that are showing this material alternative to go from a lower to a higher level. So you must note that all these are still material alternatives. So what are the material alternatives? People will call you a coward. It's much better as a Kshatriya to be known as a brave person. People will call you afraid or, somebody who was fearful of fighting a war. You need to be fearless. You will get dishonor by running away from the battle. Even if you, at least, even if you die in the battle, even if you lose with honor rather than running away with dishonor. And uphold justice as a Kshatriya instead of injustice. So all these are the points that are being made, advancing from a lower level to a higher level. So here all these points were made, and you can see one of them is lower. Cowardice is lower than bravery. Fear is lower than fearlessness. Dishonor is lower than honor. Injustice is lower than justice. So we are all at this level, or many of us may be at this level. So the Lord Krishna is saying it's better to live life at a higher level of existence. So the good side is being shown in these two verses, that upholding dharma is a great cause, especially when such opportunities come unsought. The Sanskrit word used is yadrichaya. Yadrichaya means just by good fortune. Not all Kshatriyas get the opportunity to fight. In most of the time when there is peace, there is no opportunity to fight. So Kshatriyas, are always, they get this opportunity to fight a war. And by good fortune, this has come to you. So, and it has come unsought. Pandavas were not going and looking for war. They were all for peace. But the war was thrust on them. And by doing so, it will elevate you to Swarga. Again, it is at a material level. Swarga dwaram apavritam. So it will take you to Swarga. The ugly side is being shown in the next 4 verses. What if you don't do it? If you neglect your duty as a Kshatriya and abandon the war, then you will incur sin, you will lose your reputation, you will become infamous, people will call you a coward, you will become small and insignificant and be criticized and scorned. The fundamental thing is, for those who understand Hindi, kya kahenge log. So Lord Krishna is trying to entice Arjuna with this concept that you will, you should leave a legacy. You should leave a good name. You should be written in the good side in the good pages of the history book. So aim for being such a person. Again, all of these are material. And therefore, Lord Krishna says, choose the good side. Take the side of dharma, whether you win or die. Either way, it is better than being seen as a coward. All right. So that is the material alternative. Lord Krishna is saying, okay, if you really are not fully convinced in your bones about the spiritual alternative, then at least take the higher level of material alternative. Okay. So once again, both are bodily alternatives. And Arjuna was choosing an alternative to protect his loved ones at the cost of his own infamy or his own criticism, and versus upholding duty or justice, etc. Both are material alternatives. And an important point that will be said very soon, and I want to explain this concept, is that both are binding. So the next question is binding to what? And the answer is binding to the material world. So this is a picture that is, I have put it here. It's available in this place. If you go to gitapdx.com, you follow these links, you can download a picture, a JPEG picture of this poster, and you can look at it in detail. But what this is showing is at the top half is the spiritual world, and at the bottom half is the material world. And within the material world, there are many, many universes. And then one universe is shown here in an enlarged view. And this has 14 levels of planetary systems. So Svarga is one of the higher planetary systems, and Narka Loka or Patala, there are many levels of Patals or Narka Lokas, are at the bottom levels, are at the lower levels. So if you do good deeds, you go to higher planets where you enjoy. And once your credit or your quota of enjoyment is over, you come back to the middle plane. The earth is the middle plane. That is why it is called Bhumi, or the middle earth. The earth is the middle level. And then if you do sinful actions, you go to the lower planetary systems, which are called as Narkalokas. You get some suffering, and then once the quota of suffering is done, then again you get a chance to come back to the earth planet to lead a human life. So like this, the cycle keeps going on. More will be discussed in chapter 9. But the point is that as one goes through this cycle of living at a higher level or living at a lower level, one is still bound in the material world. The spiritual option takes one out of the material world and into the spiritual world, from where there is no coming back. There is permanent happiness and bliss. So the goal of spiritual practices is to get out of the cycle of staying, going up to Swargaloka, going down to Narkaloka, coming to earth. So going to heaven, going to hell, coming to earth, like this, be in this cycle by doing good deeds or bad deeds and so on. One is still stuck in the material world. The goal of spiritual practice or spiritual life is to get out of this material world and go to the spiritual world. And there are no cycles. So that is what is, and we will see this concept of being bound. And this word bandha will be used. And I just wanted to explain here, what is one bound to, binding to what? So I hope that is clear. And then before we go to next verse, let's see what questions are there. Okay, Ram.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so I had one question regarding karma and patalok. So like unknowingly we kill a lot of jivas. Like let's say we're just walking and like step on some ants. So let's say bhakti is not in the picture. Like I know, for example, if we do bhakti, then I think karma can be nullified. But disregarding that, just for karma, like because we're killing all these jivas unintentionally, even, does that mean we all have to go to the lower planetary systems if we're not doing bhakti?
No, not just bhakti. Bhakti will definitely relieve one from these karmic reactions. But that is the purpose of the Varnashram system. We have not discussed this term, but leading a dharmic life of in Varnashram. So Varnashram are the 4x4, you can call it a 4x4 system of 4 Varnas and 4 ashramas. The 4 Varnas are Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra, and the 4 ashramas will go into a little bit more detail in the 4th chapter. And the 4 ashramas are Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. Okay, so I will just take a small example, like you said. In Grihasthashram, one has a house, a husband and wife, they have a family. Grihasthashram is the family life. And as part of family, you have to cook. The mere act of and the fundamental way of cooking is boiling water, isn't it? For most kind of cooking, you have to boil water. Just by the mere act of boiling water, so many organisms within the water are getting killed, correct? So what do you do about that? So if you are living according to the dharmic principles of Varnashram system, and Varnashram system talks about doing certain practices, not bhakti, but for example, worshipping of some devis and devatas and certainly leading a good life and so on, then the reactions of boiling water and thereby, unavoidably killing those organisms, those reactions do not incur. Okay. So one should lead. So even if one is, and living a Varnashram life has nothing to do with spirituality. It is again at a material level, but at a higher material level. So the answer is that one should lead a Vedic Varnashram system based life. And then these unavoidable, seemingly sinful reactions that are waiting for us will not apply. Okay. Does that answer your question, Ram?
Yes, thank you.
And bhakti goes one level beyond. It gives everything that is available through Varnashram and more. We will talk about that. That's what Bhagavad Gita is all about. Okay, Shrikar.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I have a follow-up to that question. So you mentioned that since like the Varnashrama system is not directly related to like bhakti, right?
Yes.
So there's brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. But most people in this day and age are anashramis, so they're not necessarily in the brahmacharya ashram. So how does this apply to them?
How does it apply to them? Well, they will suffer. I mean, most people in some sense are in some ashram. They may not be following the rules of such an ashram. For example, as far as I know, you are a brahmachari.
Sure.
So you are following, now one may not be following the rules of brahmacharya. That is the problem. I am a grihastha and I may not be following properly all the rules, and then the problem begins. And yes, those who have consciously given up a ashram and are half neither here nor there or somewhere in the middle or in somewhere completely different, yes, they better come back to Varnashram. Otherwise, they will suffer the reactions.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
All right. Okay, let us continue. So now we come to 2.38, a very, very important verse, a seminal verse. It is the connection between the science of the soul that we just discussed and the material level that we discussed. A living life at a material level, even though at a higher level of material existence, at a more elevated consciousness in a good sense. And we discussed so many ways. We can call it living in the mode of goodness or living within the Varnashram system. All of the Varnashram system promotes being or going to the mode of goodness and so on. So what this is saying is, this verse is basically saying that being at the material level, one must try to rise above it. So staying at even the highest material level is not advised. One must strive to go beyond the material level completely. And then Lord Krishna says, and therefore fight for the right reason. you should fight. So this verse says, I have this verse here on this slide. Sukha dukhe same kritva labho jaya jayo tato yuddhaya yujyasva naivam papam avapsyasi. Do thou fight for the sake of fighting without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat. And by doing so, you shall never incur sin. Now, here, when Lord Krishna is saying that you shall never incur sin, it means you will never incur any material reactions, sin or pious reactions, both. So, which means it will become non-binding. So, therefore, Lord Krishna is calling Arjuna to fight without any material considerations at all. So that is what is the essence of this 2.38. 2.38 says that this whole living at a material level is not good enough. One must strive to go to the spiritual level. Okay, and the spiritual level, a very high spiritual level, was shown when one completely acts on the level of the soul, when one is completely convinced, I am a spirit soul, this body means absolutely nothing. And on the other side, everybody else is also a spirit soul and the body means absolutely nothing. When that state is there, that's a very, very high state of existence. But right now we are not there. So how do we go from this state of existence to that state of existence? And that is the entry of yoga. 2.39 is the very first time in Bhagavad Gita where the word yoga is used. So through yoga, one rises from material platform to spiritual platform. All right. And that is the point of yoga, not a yoga for gymnastics or health or this yogasan, that yogasan. That is nice, but that is again at a material level. Real yoga means connection or engagement with the Supreme. That is real yoga. So Lord Krishna in 2.39 is giving us two different ways of approaching this topic. Which topic? The spiritual cause, or living for Arjuna, it is fighting for the spiritual cause or with a spiritual consciousness. For us, it is living our life with a spiritual consciousness. So how to live life with a spiritual consciousness? So one is analytical. It's more direct. It's less practical, which was Sankhya Yoga, Atma Gyan. So we all have now gone through those verses of Atma Gyan, of the science of the soul. Now, how many of us are very convinced? So maybe not very many. So then there is a practical aspect or a practical approach, which is known as, so that one is also yoga because it is spiritual, but the name for that is Sankhya Yoga. Then there is Buddhi Yoga. I have mentioned here Buddhi Yoga. And Lord Krishna also mentions in 2.39. He says, Esha te bhivita sankhye buddhir yoge tvimam shrunu buddhaya yukto yaya partha karma bandha prahasyasi. So karma bandham prahasyasi, and this Buddhi Yoga, and I will explain what Buddhi Yoga is, it is also able to make you free of all karma bandhanam, which means can free you from all material reactions, whether they are sinful or pious, whether they are good or bad. So that is this Buddhi Yoga is the answer of Lord Krishna, and which is what he will go into next. So this is the next huge sort of section of Bhagavad Gita. that how to go from material level to that ultimate spiritual level of Atma Jnana. The yoga of called Buddhi Yoga can take us there. And what is Buddhi Yoga? In a nutshell, Buddhi Yoga from Bhagavad Gita's perspective is Bhakti Yoga. Buddhi Yoga is nothing but the actions that we can do to rise from the material level to go to the spiritual level. That is yoga, and the best way to do it is bhakti. And this whole a large part of Bhagavad Gita discussion is about how to execute or how to do bhakti. Bhakti is nothing but a set of actions, not just actions like mechanical actions along with our consciousness, actions coupled with intention. So intentionful or motivated actions, not mechanical. Okay, so but it is end of the day, bhakti is all about taking actions. Now some actions can be in the mind also. Mind you, mind is also a organ. So mind can also take actions. Last time I think we discussed this, right? Mind can also perform action. Like I gave this example of like Star Wars, and I think, right, how Jedi can move things using the mind. Again, that's just a movie, but it's given in the Vedas also. Through the mind, the yogis can do actions. So mind is very powerful. So anyway, bhakti is all about doing actions with the right intention, with the right consciousness. And that is bhakti yoga. That is Buddhi Yoga. Now, Buddhi Yoga technically means understanding that there is a spiritual goal that we have, and using our intelligence. What is Buddhi? Intelligence. Using our intelligence to take certain actions that make us go toward the spiritual, to advance in our spiritual life. That is Buddhi Yoga. Simply, basically, taking actions that are coming from our intellect, that are guided by our intellect. Many times when we do sinful actions, our intelligence tells us that it is not right, yet we do it. Most people who commit tax fraud, that is the most basic fraud that occurs in, for example, United States. People pay less taxes. And in many other countries, everybody who is doing tax fraud knows it is wrong. There is no person who does not know that doing this is a crime. Still they do it. That means they are not applying their intelligence. So simply applying intelligence at a very basic level makes us progress. It doesn't take us to the spiritual level, but it makes us take the first step in the progress. And Bhagavad Gita also starts from there. Bhagavad Gita starts with one fundamental aspect. The fundamental aspect is detachment. Too much attachment is what is the cause of keeping us bound in the material world. Our progress towards spirituality starts with detachment. Some small level of detachment. That is the beginning point. So that is what and Bhakti also talks about that. Stop thinking about ourselves and start thinking about Bhagavan. That is Bhakti in a fundamental way. So we will unpack this more. Buddhi Yoga, or but for all practical purposes, you can assume that Buddhi Yoga is no different than Bhakti. Now, in the next couple of verses, Lord Krishna is going to describe the significance of this Buddhi Yoga. And you should, whenever we say Buddhi Yoga, you should think of it as Bhakti. Bhakti simply means devotion to Lord Krishna. Now, when I say Krishna, it does not just mean Krishna. It could mean Lord Rama. It could mean any other avatar of Bhagavan Vishnu. So, 2.40 is a very, very important verse. which says that Neha bhikrama nasho asti pratyavayo na vidyate swa alpam api asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. So it says that in this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution, no loss, or basically there is nothing to regret about. Okay. So, ne na iha abhikrama nashah asti. So, in this abhikrama, in this path, there is no nash, there is absolutely no loss or pratyavayo. And swa alpam asya dharmasya. Swa alpam, if you do even a little bit progress on this path. Now, dharmasya here is talking about the dharma of Buddhi Yoga, not the material dharma of a kshatriya or something. Trayate mahato bhayat. That it can save you. Trayate means it can save you from mahato bhayat, from the most difficult kind of reactions or destinations. So the point is that on the spiritual path, if you start walking, then that is the best solution. You can do all kind of Varnashrama, you can do all kinds of going higher and higher into material consciousness, but a slight amount of progress on the spiritual side is way more significant and is way more important and rewarding than any amount of material progress. That is what is being said here. And one of the reasons why it is so powerful is because it carries forward from one life to the other. That is not specifically in the verse, but it is given in the purport, is that spiritual progress always remains with you. It never diminishes. It always stays put. So if you made a certain level of spiritual progress, you don't regress, you don't come back from there. And it goes on from one life to the other to the other. It is very much unlike, for example, something in this life, wealth, property, etc., that will stay here itself. It will not go into the next life. If you become a very famous person, next life you could be born as a dog. Nobody could care less. Also, even if you incur a lot of pious credits, lot of punya, it gets used up. You go in next life, you enjoy in your next life, and it gets used up. Then it diminishes. You're back to your bank balance, like a bank balance. You come back to zero. Spiritual progress is not like that. When you make, and this will be discussed more in chapter 6, in the last 5 or 6 verses of chapter 6, this topic is discussed, that when you make certain spiritual progress, you go into a better next life. That spiritual progress is not getting used up like your credit card or your bank balance. It gives you an opportunity to make further progress, and you keep going forward. So that is why spiritual progress is so much better than any amount of material progress. Next verse, Lord Krishna is talking about another very important aspect of conducting spiritual progress. Lord Krishna is talking about singularity of focus. Now, this is common even to any material progress. You ask any materially successful person, whether it be Bill Gates, Elon Musk, or Mahatma Gandhi, or whoever, take anyone who has had tremendous material progress. Any scientist, Albert Einstein, whoever it may be, singular focus. Focus is very, very important. And that is what is being said in the 41st verse. Even for spiritual progress, Singular focus is very important. So this 41st verse is very important. It says, Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kuru nandana bahu shakha hi anantascha buddhayo avyavasayinam. Those who are on this path are resolute in purpose. Vyavasayatmika buddhi, very resolute. And their aim is one, ekeha kuru nandana, ekeha. O beloved child of the Kurus, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many branched. Bahu shakha hi anantascha, ananta, like unlimited. Bahu shakha, so many, I want this, I want that, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do that. Then it is not useful at all. So they will not make progress. So this verse is talking about singularity of focus, that spiritual progress requires singularity of focus. So it doesn't mean that you should leave everything, but when or stop doing, living your life, you have a job, family, but take out time. The practical guidance is to take out time, at least a couple of hours, 2-3 hours every day. That means one is serious about spiritual life. Other than basic livelihood, which means 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of work, few hours of taking care of necessary households, leaves at least 2 to 3 hours with a person. That should solely be dedicated to spiritual activities. So the life has to be oriented around spiritual progress. That's a very conscious choice you have to make. It is not one of the compartments of your life that, oh, I like woodwork, I like gardening, I like watching movies, I like trekking and hiking, I like spirituality. So Monday I will do hiking, Tuesday I will go to movies, Wednesday I will do gardening, on Friday I will do spirituality. That is not Ekeha Kurunandana. So apart from living the basic or meeting the basic needs of your livelihood, 100% of time and energy should be dedicated to spiritual progress. Then one can have some meaningful progress in this life. Now you ask yourself, are you doing that? Are you willing to do that? And if the answer is yes, then you will make progress by leaps and bounds. Leaps and bounds, I promise you. Okay. So, though I have said here on this slide I had made maybe when I was in a little bit of a liberal mood, don't worry right now about singularity of focus. But what I am saying is little more strict and little more direct and little more intense. So, but the message is the same. Work on increasing your focus. So I'm not saying that if you don't have singularity of focus, then leave, stop reading Bhagavad Gita, go enjoy, don't come to these classes, throw away your Bhagavad Gita. That's not the point. In that case, work towards it, but at least know that till you come to the point of singular focus, good progress will not happen. So as soon as possible, as quickly as possible, please try to come to that level and then maintain the consistency. And yet, even after doing all this, the progress will be gradual. So don't expect, oh, for last 1 month, I have been doing this. Where are the results? Why have I not become a yogi or a bhakta like Srila Prabhupada? So don't expect overnight results. So work towards it. It's a very long journey. And because the goal is very, very high, very, very high. Recently, the Olympics were concluded in Paris. So many people spend years and years and years of tapasya, of hard work, and still only very few get the recognition. So spiritual life is not much different in that sense. It's one has to be consistent, shouldn't expect overnight results, and singularity of focus is very, very important. I am not seeing any questions or hands raised, so I'll keep going. Okay, if there are questions, raise your hands. Then, next 5 verses are giving a very, very important warning. And the warning is about the Vedas. So here in the 15 minutes that I have, I want to explain this important concept. So I will read the 42nd and 43rd verse, which are given together in the Bhagavad Gita. It says, men of small intelligence are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so on and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this. So what are the Vedas? So if you see, Veda Vada Ratah Partha, this is the 3rd line of the 42nd verse. So what is in the Vedas? So the Vedas, largely 80 to 90% of the Vedas are talking about, let me go back in the slides. My computer is hanging today. Yeah, large part of the Vedas are talking about this slide. How to advance from lower to higher consciousness at a material level. So much of the Vedas are keeping people at a material level. So it's a good thing though. But the Vedas are catering to the vast majority of the people who are living at a lower level of material consciousness and trying to take them to a higher level of material consciousness. So if you open the Vedas and you might find, oh, this is all material. Where is spiritual in this? So that constitutes a very small part of the Vedas, and primarily those are known as the Upanishads. The Upanishads are part of the Vedas, and that is why the Upanishads are so much highly revered. So here Lord Krishna is saying that don't focus on the Vedas, because one may ask, okay, Lord Krishna, you are telling me all this spiritual knowledge, but there is vast amount of knowledge. So, people think like that. Those who don't know that there is vast amount of spiritual knowledge in the Vedas. And when I read them, it all looks material. So how do we reconcile? So the reconciliation is that the Vedas are talking about taking people from a lower material consciousness to a higher material consciousness. And that is why Lord Krishna is saying to Arjuna, you are on the fast track. I would like you to take up the spiritual path right away. Don't wait to come to or don't spend all your life to come from the lower material consciousness to the higher material consciousness. Start taking the path of spiritual life with focus, because of verse 2.40 that we discussed, where it is said that this spiritual progress is very, very powerful. A little amount of spiritual progress outweighs any amount of material progress. Okay. So Lord Krishna is saying, don't focus on the Vedas. And he will give the reason in the last verse. Last verse means last verse of this section, number 46, in 2.46. So Vedas are basically promoting very regulated sense gratification. If somebody is eating too much, the Vedas will tell him eat a little bit less. If somebody is eating less, the Vedas will tell him you stop eating one day in a week. If somebody is already not eating one day in a week, Vedas will tell him to not eat 2 days in a week. And like that, to make progress from wherever one is situated. And the Vedas are meant for the vast majority. And the vast majority of people are very attached to sense gratification. And that is why 44th verse is very, very important. I do not have a slide on it. So in your Bhagavad Gita, maybe I should add a slide on number 44. It is one of the memorization verses for Bhakti Shastri. So please pay attention. It's a very important verse which says, Bhog Aishwarya Prasaktanam Taya Prata Chetasam Vyavasayatmika Buddhi Samadhau Na Vidhiyate. So what is being said is that Bhog Aishwarya Prasaktanam, those who are too interested in Bhoga means all kind of sense gratification. Now the problem with the Vedas, I just want to say this, please listen carefully, is that the Vedas say you can stop eating one day in a week, eat 6 days. Let us say Vedas, I'm just making a statement, okay, example. People will take that literally and never progress further from there. The whole life they will stay at 6 days of eating. The purpose was that this verse or this instruction from the Vedas is meant for those who are eating all 7 days, as an example, to let them do some regulation, some restriction in their sense gratification, and then go further from there. People just stay at that level. So in the Vedas, there are many things for somebody who is very, very attached to sense gratification. The Vedas will say do something less. People take that literally, that it is perfectly fine to stay at this level. For somebody, it may say that, you can eat 10 laddus in a day. Maybe that instruction is for somebody who was eating much more than that. Now you'll say, okay, every day I will do my puja and everything and I will eat 10 laddus. Then you will get diabetes. The idea is to progress further from there. And people think, oh, Vedas are allowing this level of sense gratification. This level of sense gratification is allowed in the Vedas. And let me go all out and enjoy and stay at that level. Then you are not following the purpose of the Vedas. Now, it is true in the Vedas, meat eating is also allowed. Now, it is meant for those, for example, who are addicted to eating meat. Okay, the Vedas say you should eat meat only once in a week or once in a month. So people say, oh, see, Vedas are saying this. So I will continue to eat meat for the rest of my life within the boundary given by the Vedas. That is the problem of the Vedas. The purpose of the Vedas is not understood. People take it literally and just stay there. So, and that is where Lord Krishna is giving a warning. And this verse is very important because it's saying, Bhog Aishwarya, those who are very attached to sense gratification. Taya aprita chetasam. And their cheta, their mind is completely, taken away by these sense gratifications. Vyavasayatmika buddhi. And they are not fixed in with determination. Samadho na vidhiyate. They can never approach the state of samadhi. They will never make any spiritual progress. So that's why sense gratification or too much attachments or too much luxury or too much opulence in one's life in a certain in some sense is not good for spiritual progress. So one must be very careful about this point and try to reduce their sense gratification. So 45 and 46 says the Vedas deal mainly with the subject of the three modes of material nature. Mainly deal with. Okay, that's not all, but that is the bulk. O Arjuna, become transcendental to these three modes. So Arjuna, Lord Krishna is saying, my dear Arjuna, you have to go beyond this. You cannot stay there. Make progress towards going to the spiritual level. Transcending the three modes means transcending the material modes. The three modes are Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. So these are all at a material level. Go beyond these. Be free from all the dualities. Dualities means dualities exist in material world, not in spiritual world. Material world has dualities, friend and enemy, rich and poor, or whatever, good and bad, victory and loss. All these things, all these negatives and positives are the dualities which exist in the material world, and we spend our whole life chasing these dualities. So be free from all the dualities and from all the anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. And 46th verse is the summary, which is saying that the purpose is most important. So 46 is saying that all purposes served by a small well can at once be served by a great reservoir of water also. So purpose, maybe the purpose of both is the same. Similarly, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. So Bhagavad Gita is the essence of the Vedas. After reading all the Vedas and following the Vedas over 200 lifetimes, it's just, instead of doing that, it's better to follow Bhagavad Gita in one lifetime. That is the point. Because Bhagavad Gita is the essence of the Vedas. The purpose is much, much more important than all the elaborate processes as explained in the Vedas. Okay. So we will stop here. Next verse is 2.47. Very famous and a very, very important verse. Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phalahe turbhur mate sangostva karmani. So now we will go there. That verse is directly talking about detachment. And it is saying be detached from the results, not to the actions. Actions should be done with commitment, but the results is something you should become detached with. So that is that's the core essence of yoga, or the beginning of yoga. So we will deal with that in the next verse, in the next class, which will happen after a couple of weeks. So a couple of weeks break. Those in Bhakti Shastri, please, I have released the chapter 2 homework. We are halfway or more than halfway into chapter 2. So at least the questions that you can do, please start doing them. Don't wait to finish chapter 2 to start doing the homework. There are many questions in the homework that you can already start doing. And if you want, you can read ahead in chapter 2 and attempt the remaining questions also. Don't slack behind in your homeworks. So keep a eye on the announcements about the next class. So we will have a break of a couple of weeks. Any questions? Yes, Pradeep ji. 1 second. Hold on. Let me. Yes, you can unmute.
Hare Krishna. I had a couple of questions. First question is about singularity of the focus. So in our day-to-day life, we are like so involved and engrossed in our work and like our daily chores. how can we increase our singular focus when we are doing bhakti? Because even when we are trying to do that, the span of focus is very limited, right? When we actually concentrate towards God. After that, we again start thinking about what we have to do after the puja gets over. It happens very
Okay, go ahead.
yeah, it happens like all the time. To
Yeah,
me.
that is because we have not understood the urgency of spiritual life.
Hmm.
It has just not become urgent enough or important enough in our lives. So it's a very important question that you have asked. And I don't know how to bring urgency in your life, you know. It's the same thing, when I don't know if you're interested in the theory of nations and all, but when everything is going good, the society declines. All kinds of wokeism and this and that come up. But when there is a war, the whole nation unites, isn't it? It is sometimes said war is a great unifier of nations. And then everybody comes together. Otherwise, we keep fighting about petty things. This tax reform, that tax reform, this thing, that thing, all these things, whether we should use the fossil fuel or renewable energy and climate change and this and that and that. And we keep fighting and we forget that we are friends, we are brothers, we are supposed to live like, in a very kind and compassionate way. And we become monsters. But when there is war, when there is external threat, then there is unity. So in the same way, yeah, I mean, if everything, that's exactly what I said in 2.44. When everything is going well in life, then to prioritize spiritual progress is certainly hard. All I can say is too bad. Now, having said that, one must look around and see if something has not happened to me yet. It could happen in the future. That is one way. And the best way, the absolute best way of making this a priority in our life is by associating with people who have made it a priority in their lives. But that's an intermediate answer. Because from them you will get the inspiration of why it should be a priority in your life. So constant association with such people will keep you in that conversation that I need to make this a priority in my life. It is not a priority in my life today, but let me continue to associate. Something will rub off. So someday you will get some insights or something. But it is very important to find ways to make bhakti a priority in our life. Reading scriptures is another very important way to do it. But again, reading scriptures, associating with others are all in themselves acts of bhakti. These two things that I mentioned, associating with those who have such priority in their life well set, and reading scriptures, both are in themselves acts of bhakti. You might say, I have time today. Shall I go associate with those people? Let's say you found somebody like that. Or shall I sit at home and finish some more, office work, or, have chit chat with friends or watch a movie or whatever? That's also a choice you have to make. Those people will not come and force their association on you. You have to go seek it out. So again, it comes back to how do I make that a priority? So we have to be really serious about our spiritual life. There is no other answer. And that is why many people don't take to it. That's exactly the reason, because they don't understand that this is something that is very, very important. I mean, I have been in spiritual life for 20, 25 years. I will say I'm not taking it 100% seriously myself. There is some soul searching I need to do. It takes time. What you should do is that you should dedicate some time. You should find out. Now, again, go through the Bhagavad Gita and go through other scriptures. Again, that also takes your interest to attend those classes, or it requires you to put away something else and turn on your computer and start the Zoom, or drive to some place and go and sit and associate with those people. That also is a choice you can or cannot, or you may or may not make. But you will see through these discussions, there are multiple ways of doing bhakti. Find out something that you naturally like. Bhakti is not one way. It's not. Now, for example, many people think doing some kind of worshipping a deity is bhakti. Definitely, it's an act of bhakti, but that's not the only one. Me personally, for example, I don't find myself so interested or so attracted to worshipping a deity. What is known as archana. Archanam is the actual Sanskrit word. There are other limbs, other acts of bhakti that I like to do. So somebody may have attraction for doing natural attraction for doing something else, something else, something else. Find that. For that, you need to know these are all the possible acts of bhakti. Okay, sitting in a bar and watching a football game is not an act of bhakti. So you cannot say, oh, I like to do that and this is my bhakti. That would be nonsense. So you should know what are the valid paths of bhakti or valid actions of bhakti. Within that, you try to see what you would like the most. Try to do that, because there is more possibility of you being connected, you being hooked, you being attached, instead of doing something else which you are not attached to, and then it feels like a chore, a ritual. It's like a force. Are you following? So these are all the things that I can say. So I talked about associating, reading the scriptures, really finding the urgency, finding the significance that this is really, my life is going away. I'm telling you, you are maybe what, like 25, 30, I don't know, you look like that, again, in a general sense. Very soon you will be 50. In no time you will be 75. You have the golden opportunity right now. You have so many years ahead of you. Imagine what it will be when you are 75 and you are asking this question. No time left. Then you will wish, aha, had I asked this or known this or did this when I had time. So all these things, and even 50 years is short. It will fly like this.
Another follow-up question. Thank you for answering this question. But so on the contrary, there are a lot of examples given. For example, like a lot of people in Mahabharata describe the Pandavas, for example. They lived their life, and after a certain period of time, they left their duties and went to the jungle to basically do the sadhana, and ultimately they got the moksha. So how were they able to attain it in like such a less period of time? And how is it?
Yeah. So that is the wrong understanding completely. So there is a counter example. Prahlad Maharaj in 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam says that bhakti should be started from the youngest possible age, as soon as you learn to speak. As soon as you learn learn to talk, you should start doing bhakti of Bhagavan. So first of all, I just say, I'll give a little longer answer. Mahabharata is a dharma shastra. So if you look at the life of a person, You can look at it from many angles. Okay, if you look at the life of Mahatma Gandhi, you can think of it like a freedom fighter or something like that. And that's what he's most well known for. But on the other side, he was a great Ram Bhakt also. He always used to keep doing Ram Jap. At the end of his life, when he was shot, he uttered the words, Hey Ram. Not many people are able to do that. That was a result of his strong sadhana throughout his life. But he's not known, or that's not the most commonly known thing about that person, because that was a private side of his life. Maybe if he had more years to live, he would have shared more about that aspect of his life, having accomplished the main purpose of his life. Maybe, I don't know. He died, for 3 months, 4 5 months after accomplishing his objective, right? So anyway, so in the same way, the life of Pandavas in the Mahabharata is shown as dharma, from the angle how they followed dharma. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the life of Pandavas is shown from the side of bhakti. So Pandavas were bhaktas of Krishna right from the beginning. When Draupadi was being disrobed, she took the name of Krishna. When Durvasa Muni came and she had no food left, she remembered Krishna. When Arjun was given the choice between Krishna and his army, he chose Krishna. Every time he landed in trouble in the war, he took shelter of Krishna. Throughout his life, throughout their lives, they were bhaktas. So it is not that only at the end of their life. At the end of their life, during the life, they were conducting their duties. They were in grihasthashram, then they went to vanaprastha and so on. But bhakti can be done. Bhakti is not an ashram. When I told the 4 ashrams, brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha and sannyas, bhakti is not one of them. Bhakti is integrated in all 4. It must be done in all 4. So in Kali Yuga, it is very hard for a young boy to take sannyas. Not possible. So one must stay in the respective ashrama according to the age, but fill it with bhakti. So that is what Pandavas also did, but that is lesser known. So this whole concept that I will put away anything spiritual till I am 75, till then I will be like eat, drink and be merry, is a very foolish and unproductive way to live life. Okay, so one must not, these are all examples given by people who themselves don't take spiritual life seriously, and they go around giving these examples as if they are great shastris, great knowers of Shastra, saying, oh, see, it is like this, like this, like this, like this. Yeah, I am good, you are good, we are all good. Let's eat, drink, be merry, be happy. No need to do anything. All these justifications come from such kind of people. So you can choose to listen to such people, or you can choose to listen to the saints like Srila Prabhupada. So I hope
sense.
that some answer to your question.
Yeah, that answers. Thank you.
Very good question. Okay. Okay, I don't see any more questions, and we are beyond time. So we will end here, and we will see you in after a gap of couple of weeks. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Guru Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.